mad about it. We're not mad enough because we're not mad enough to bitch slap him back. When you talk about what we got from King, he was a non-violent man, but that didn't mean he didn't believe in self-defense. Somebody tell me what Christine, what is her name, Rome Cone? What is she got on her head? She's killed a dog and out here talking crazy. But anyway. So Trump invades a sovereign country, whatever you think, snatches a leader, steals the oil, Venezuela having the largest oil deposits in the world, reserves in the world. And what did this California, what did the Congressional Black Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries, those people said, well, you should come to Congress first. Like it was okay if Congress had looked at it. Really? And we don't really care about it because it was just Maduro. He's some type of narco-terrorist. And that's what we thought. As though the rest of the world is led by pure, whatever, people that are just and kind and all this other stuff, including this one. And then there's talking about taking Greenland from the Danes who took it from the Inuit in the first place, right? Doesn't belong to the Danes. There are people living there who are mostly Inuit. We forgot about that. It's hard to see any of that. Lights are horrible. Sorry about that. And you know what? 83 years old is hard for me to read. I'm lucky to be standing, actually. And then, geez, I can't see it. The light is horrible. And then there's talking about threatening to move on Iran because they're killing protesters. Wait a minute. Killing protesters. That's starting to sound very familiar. Not just the other day, only a few miles or a few blocks from where George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. We went from a black man to a white woman, indiscriminate. That's the time we're going to be indiscriminate. Just start killing people on the streets. And now we're mad at Minneapolis or whatever that's about. And then there's running into Nigeria, talking about you stopping the slaughter of Christians. You're not there to take oil from the Nigerians, are you? And then there's telling the people in Ghana and Uganda, Rwanda, that they're going to have to take the deportees from America into their prisons and giving them not even 30 pieces of silver to do it, and they're doing it. That's deep business. That's the whole world. Except maybe China. Domestically, he's got his Negro Clarence Thomas talking about ending the Voting Rights Act. And that's funny because Clarence Thomas went to Holy Cross on a Martin Luther King scholarship and then stopped affirmative action, did everything he could. Isn't that amazing? And then he's going to, as Dr. Akila said, I call you Dr. Akila if I may, said, he's going to eliminate DEI as though it sort of came and went. What was it? I don't even remember. Somebody got a job in a bank or, got a title, head Negro title, something like that. Black History Month, he's going to eliminate, probably Martin Luther King Day, or at least make it illegal, and cutting off all affordable health care and anything else that looked like it wanted to be affordable. That's what we're doing in the United States. And he's continuing to do it, and what are we doing? So I would say, well, where do we go from here? Because that's really what the question is other than that. We could all complain about Trump. Anybody can't complain about Trump. Is, Christy Nome, is her name Nome? I can't remember her name. She comes from a state that's not a destination. Been down in the hood to get that weave on her head. That's an ugly weave, anyway. So the question is, where do we go from here? Now, that's a question that Dr. King asked in 1967 at the SCLC convention. Where do we go from here? He said, we're proud that we were able to finally get the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act passed in 1964-65. But when I look at America today, I see that blacks have half of what is good and double of what is bad. Where do we go from here? Half of what is good and double of what is bad. He said, I can tell you where we can go. We can go to Washington, D.C., to the seat of government and cash our check. because we've got to end poverty. We've been bamboozled by Johnson's so-called war on poverty. We need to end systemic poverty. We need to create a poor people's campaign, he said. We need to strategize and go to DC and occupy D until our demands are met. Full employment or guaranteed income, that's it. Affordable housing. This is Dr. King, 1967. He wasn't just speaking, spiritually in the church and hoping some kind of miracle would occur. He's trying to make one happen right then and there. And people were coming from all over the world, all over the country. Black people and white people and people from the native people from the reservation walking and taking trains and buses to go to DC to march on Washington, demanding $30 billion just to get ourselves out of the triple threats of poverty, racism, and militarism, as Dr. King said. And what happened? We don't even remember the Poor People's Campaign. We know one thing: in the April before the Poor People's Campaign was supposed to start, somebody put a bullet in Dr. King's throat and killed him in Memphis, Tennessee. That was the end of that conversation. And where do we go from here? So where are we today in terms of half of what is good and double of what is bad? Well, Black people have the highest poverty rate in America. And we didn't come here looking for a better life, you know that, right? We didn't come here looking for religious freedom. We didn't actually come here. We were dragged here, as we well know. We have the highest homelessness rate, highest incarceration rate. I'm so sorry about the way I'm looking at these notes. I could be looking at them differently. But in any case, highest infant mortality, isn't that right, Dr. Aquila? Highest maternal mortality rate, highest prostate cancer death rate, highest cervical and breast cancer death rates, lowest educational attainment levels, lowest home ownership, and we don't really have any wealth in America. We don't make anything. We have nothing to do with the means of anything at all that is driving the economy. No transportation. We don't own any planes or boats or trains. That's why we're not bringing crack and fentanyl into America. That's for sure. But we don't own anything to bring it on. No telecommunication, global entertainment, no manufacturing, no bank. We don't own anything in America. Really. I'm saying we as a people. Now, we do have a few Black billionaires. Most of them are entertainers, jumping through hoops. And singing and dancing, singing and dancing. Only a few are not entertainers. And then we have people like Snoop Dogg, as if he mattered anywhere, declaring his love for Donald Trump. Actually said that, right? I'm not crazy. And the saddest part is just like Michelle Obama said, she loved George W. Bush to death. Look it up if you don't believe me. You don't have to do AI, you can look up articles, videos, and hear her saying it. So the question is, how did we get here to be in such an oppressive state in this richest country, most powerful, all of that in the world? Is something wrong with Black people? A lot of people think that. There's something wrong, must be something wrong with you. People come here from all over the world, they make it. What's wrong with you? Some type of genetic flaw? Some kind of criminal-minded, lazy-ass people don't want a job, don't want to work? Is there something wrong with Black people, or is there something wrong in the scheme of things? Now, some people want to believe that there's something wrong. Even some of our own people believe there's something wrong with us. This year we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America in 1776, right? Founded as a slave-holding country. Slavery was legal. Matter of fact, trying to be free was illegal. We forgot that part, right? We forgot that. We want to write that out of history. That's called Black history, but it's not Black history, it's actually the history of America. And the most prominent of the founding fathers, author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, who was one of the biggest slaveholders of his time, over 600 slaves, some of them which were his children, of course, as we know. One of the biggest ones, who wrote a book called, the only book he ever wrote, called Notes on the State of Virginia, says ultimately that he advances it that while we can say that all men are created equal, and we're using this great experiment of America, we just can't include the Black because the black is inherently inferior to the white in the endowments of both body and mind. This is Thomas Jefferson. You can look it up. It's all over the place. So you don't have to believe an old Black Panther woman. Some kind of conspiracy. And so here is Thomas Jefferson asserting this is why we have to keep slavery and keep all these people that make me so much money. Because he and George Washington were the richest men in America at the time. And they both had large numbers of slaves. Washington had about 300 slaves. And people say things like, well, at least Washington freed the slaves when he died. I mean, as though this is like a statement of something we should be proud of. You know? Here they were 150 years before that, enslaved and so forth. But by the time of the founding of the country, South Carolina rice growers and Georgia cotton planters were the richest men in the world. They didn't need England anymore. They said, later, we're going to be independent. We got so much money. These slaves are producing everything on the planet. As Karl Marx said, but for cotton, there would have been no industrial revolution, and but for slaves, there would have been no cotton. Now, we like to ignore that. We're like, oh, that was then. I'm not responsible for that. Neither am I, but I'm still suffering from it. See what I mean? No, you don't. Of course, black people fought back. On the ships, we fought back coming from the continent. Brown University founded on the money that the Brown family made, bringing over 100,000 slaves from the continent of Africa into the United States. And we want to call that an Ivy League school. I'm very proud to go there and pay money. Why are we paying so much money to go to school? I don't know. But anyway, we fought back, generation upon generation, everything we could do. We had uprisings, we had rebellions, we had quiet rebellions. And in the meantime, we created the original music in American jazz and the original cuisine too, everything from macaroni and cheese to barbecue. But we never owned anything here, not even our own bodies or our own lives. We never had anything here. We didn't have our own name. Everything was taken from us. Taken from our land, we had no name, no religion. We had no human rights to be married, to be educated, to speak our own language. We didn't even know what it was. And that went on for what? 150 years before the founding, and then went on up to the point of the Civil War. And then Lincoln issues the proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation. Everybody thought it was a wonderful thing that he freed the slaves. I don't know why anybody thought that. And Lincoln said, look, I like any man believing in the superiority of the white race. I'm saying this is a necessary war measure. And it was, because the minute he issued that proclamation, black people in the South, slaves, started leaving those plantations. These people had to fight in the Confederacy. The Confederacy was winning the war by 1863. The war tide of war changed. Black people started joining the Union Army despite the fact that they weren't even welcome. By the time the war was over and black people followed Sherman to the sea when he burned the land and marched to the sea, to Savannah, over 200,000 blacks were in the Union Army. We don't even recognize that. And Sherman said, what am I going to do with all these former slaves? It's not like he was in love with black people. It's just that you got all these people that used to be slaves. There's something to be mad at you. You better figure out something to do with them. And so Sherman issued Field Order number 15. And said, I'm going to divide up 40-acre plots of all this land that I've confiscated from the Confederates, and I'm going to divide it up and give it to these slave families so they can have some land. Now, how long did that last? About 10 minutes. The new president, after Lincoln was assassinated, former governor of Tennessee, never been to school, Andrew Johnson. Don't you love knowing stuff like that? We worry about, does a black person have a PhD? You know, it's like, does Mark Zuckerberg have a PhD? Bill Gates have a PhD? We don't ask that question, and they don't. They don't even have undergraduate degrees, do they, Dr. Q? But in any case, he gives out these 40-acre plots. People start moving on them, saying we can have some kind of life here. We don't know where to go back to. We don't know our country. We don't have a country anymore. This is all we got. And Andrew Johnson said, you better move off these white people's land, get out of here, because that's over. If you're not off these lands by Christmas, we're sending in the army and gave back the lands to the original owners, as he said. And that was before the passage, the ratification of the 13th Amendment. And at the same time, it was the time when the black codes were introduced as laws in all of the 11 Confederate states. And that was merely a law that criminalized being black. it was like a crime to be breathing while black, you know what I mean? And what was your punishment? Your punishment was to work in the rising industrial industries, working on the coal mine, working to build coal mines, working on the rail lines, building that terminus, that long western push to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, where the railroad terminus ends in Oakland, California, West Oakland. I make note, this is Mia Bonta, my representative. That's where we have that. And so we just tried to survive as a kind of people who were let loose in a place that was hostile to us and where we had been oppressed for over 250 years, around 250 years, or more than that. And so other than that, we had to figure out how we could be accepted into this society. How could we be accepted when we only yesterday had been slaves? And except for Booker T. Washington, he said, look, we've got to create our own money, our own place here. We don't care if we integrate in with you, but we have to have something of our own. Same thing, Marcus Garvey, who came to the United States to see Booker T. Washington. Same thing with Elijah Muhammad, who was following Marcus Garvey. We need self-determination. We need our own economic independence because nobody's coming to save us or give us a damn thing. And by the end of that century, the 19th century, the Plessy case had made sure we weren't going to get a thing with this fake idea of separate but equal. And people thought that was okay. Plessy was an octoroon, that's what he called himself, trying to get on the train and sit with white people. The court said, look, Plessy, first of all, you're really not white. You got 1/8 black blood running through you, so we declare you to be black. But here's the other thing, Plessy. We can't make white people sit next to you, socially engineer these people, but we'll say this, you are right. If you pay the same price, you should have the same accommodations. So we're saying that as long as the accommodations in public places are equal, they can be separate. But we didn't have a train, did we? Nobody built a train for black people that was equal to that of white people. We didn't have any housing that was being built for us. We didn't have any hospitals being built. So we had to find our way into the system that existed. And we spent the next, 60-some years fighting to integrate ourselves into the United States of America's day-to-day social construct. NAACP said, look, we got to improve ourselves. Du Bois started talking about the talented 10th. We had to be better. We had to get better so we could be accepted into this world. And we fought to get accepted from Montgomery to Selma. We fought to get a seat on a public bus. Can you imagine fighting a whole goddamn year to get a seat on the bus? We didn't own a bus, but we had a seat on the bus. Fought for the right to sit in a public school classroom. A bloody fight to enforce Brown v. Board of Education. Never did enforce it, and their schools remained segregated and unequal. Fought for the right to vote. Fought for the right to vote. And we were supposed to be citizens, which was, of course, whatever that meant. So much blood was shed in those fights just to integrate ourselves into a society that didn't want us in the first place. Because we were no longer valuable. We were only valuable when we were slaves. And so here we were, still having half of what was good and double of what was bad. In 1966, the Black Panther Party that I joined was formed. And the Black Panther Party considered ourselves revolutionaries, meaning that there had to be a systemic change for us to get rid of racism and the capitalism that had been the driving force of racism. All that money that we could be making off this free labor. And so we engaged in a struggle to create the conditions for revolutionary change, or what we thought was revolutionary change. Our ongoing oppression, we knew, was not grounded in us. It was grounded in the system in this country that we had to uproot. As Dr. King said before he died, he said, you know, when he talked about what America was about and what was wrong and the systemic change, Paul J. Hoover called him a communist, or a communist because J. Hoover couldn't say communist. He said, look, you can't fix America. There's too many sins, too many crimes. the crime of slavery, war, unending war, theft, poverty, all of this. America has to be born again, Dr. King said. It has to be born again. Coming from the Bible, it has to be born again. But we know what happened to King when he tried to create the conditions for that kind of change. Assassinated. Now, after a decade or more of working, the Black Panther Party was destroyed by the FBI. We were collapsed. We were out of energy. People were dead, in prison, and so forth. Organization called SNCC was gone. Malcolm was gone. Our movement, our freedom movement was dying. It wasn't the civil rights movement. It was the freedom movement. Oh, freedom over me, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. And somewhere between that period and now, some blacks who have benefited from the blood that was shed all these hundreds of years, got in little positions of theoretical power from the blood of the people. I know it was the blood. Yes, I know it was the blood. They chose comfort over freedom. Now we gotta be careful that we don't do that, huh? We can't be just laughing and grinning all the time and thinking everything's okay in our little corner of the world, because it's not. And some of us became gatekeepers, making sure nobody else messed up our privileges that we were getting from white people and allowing us to sit at their table or somewhere near them. And we embraced the Americanism of loving ourselves over everybody else. I'm not a part of a group. For me, I worked hard for my money. You know, people say that, pull myself up by my bootstraps, as though that were possible. As though you could just live life in isolation. Somehow you miraculously pulled yourself up from somewhere. And then a generation or two was born of crack, right? That's what happened in these years in between. And we continue to languish in a state of oppression, whether we want to think so or not. And all of us who think we made it need to look around the corner and see what's really going on. And so we have Trump bitch slapping everybody and us standing here mad about it, but not willing to stand up for it. Really not willing to do what Dr. King did. We know what he might have done. It certainly wouldn't have been sit around being silent, talking about Congress could have been consulted. What does that even mean? So if we remember King, let's try to remember why he was killed and who killed him, okay? Let's try to remember that. And if we remember King, we have to overcome fear. We're afraid to lose our job, afraid to lose our home, mostly afraid to lose our lives. Don't want to be left out. So we're willing to compromise to the point of pain. Remembering what we came here to do, especially here in this legislation, because we know that we got here because our ancestors fought for these little teeny things for us black to get where we are. We have all these firsts. You know why? Because that's all they are. There's the first, that's the last one, right? Let us rise up. Let us unite, and that's very important, and to fight. And remember, this is still a fight for freedom, the power to determine our destinies. But what I remember, I also remember, I think about Dr. King, I think about the work that we did with Black Panther Party, and I remember there was a leader of our party named Fred Hampton. And Fred Hampton used to say, I ain't gonna die slipping on no ice. I ain't gonna die in no airplane crash. I'm gonna die for the people, because I live for the people, because I love the people. Power to the people. Thank you.